Welcome to the January 29th meeting of the Weare Board of Selectmen. If you will please stand, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Department head and committee items.
Yeah, Sean had something. No, Sean has something.
You want to hand that copy over to them so they're looking at it at the same time, please?
I only made one copy.
Okay. There's a number of outdoor lights at the public safety complex that are out. 4 light poles, an exterior light over.
Steve, too.
Yeah.
Lights. Yeah, one building light. Building light. I'd like to see something different. One little light outside the gym.
Did we have invoices from them before, or? Yes.
We do. So, okay, so we have used
Okay,
them.
we have used them, okay.
They've been out for quite a while.
They have been.
The reason I asked is that we do have an electrician that works a lot for the towns.
Yep.
And if they've been out quite a while, maybe a week more would give us a chance to see if that's reasonable, you know?
Yeah, that's fine. The four pole lights, what do you think, Bob, since last fall sometime anyway, right? Yeah, and the the lights over your, I don't know how long they've been out. Okay, so, I don't think another week's gonna kill us.
Yeah.
But-
I don't want to mention the names of
Right, but I
contractors
think the
here,
name that you're thinking of is the name that you and I have had a conversation about, which you guys didn't want him to do anything in the building.
Okay,
Not trying to be cryptic,
I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to have that conversation. I'll look into other quotes. How about that?
Yeah, I think because the nature of the work and the size of the quote, it'd be
It'd be a heck of a thing if it was just a light bulb, wouldn't it?
right.
Yeah, $800 for light bulbs.
All right, I'll get back to you.
That it, John?
That's it for me.
You have a question about the, cable, I'm sorry. No name tag.
Last week I had mentioned to the board that the possibility would be to broadcast a deliberative session because of the conversion over to fiber optics. Well, the cable committee and the town administrator went over last week and met with the new TI person over there, IT person, sorry. And he was unaware of what the requirements were or that the school meeting would be broadcast from that. We spent about 2 hours over there. There's a cable drop in the cafetorium. That's a coax, it's not fiber optics. Fiber optics was not dropped into the cafetorium. We were able to trace that back to an IT room and think we can hook up another piece of equipment to that, make a conversion, and then connect into fiber optics. The cable committee is going over tomorrow night. We'll spend at 4 o'clock, we'll spend as much time as we have to over there to hopefully make sure we can broadcast live. If we can't, plan B is to record it like we have in prior years and then rebroadcast.
The school district meeting is Tuesday.
Right.
Kind of be a dry run if they can broadcast that or not.
Well, we'll know tomorrow night if we can do it.
Yeah.
And then it'll be set up for the school board meeting. In addition to just broadcasting the meeting, they have to set up the room, microphones, et cetera, which this person hasn't done before. The prior IT person did. But yeah, at least we'll have a dry run tomorrow night. Hopefully it'll work. And a real run through on the school board. And then that'll be our turn. Hopefully any bugs have been taken care of by then.
Thank you, David. Bob, do you have anything? For the finance committee?
Yeah, well, kind of our reiteration of something else. On the second, your meeting on the second, I asked about the plates on car 8 being changed from 660 to 88, and then to a regular 7-digit plate. And Ricky and Tom, you both had simultaneously yelled that you'll get back to me, and it's been a month and I haven't heard.
Okay, we will, but it's really, right now, this is for department heads and committee items.
Well, I'm on the committee, on the finance committee.
Yeah, but it isn't really,
It's a town vehicle.
really isn't finance committee related. So,
Whatever.
we got the message, Craig, and we'll follow through on it for you. Any other department head or committee items? Okay, next, we have to post the warrant tonight. So we've got to do anything that's necessary to get it into the form for posting. I think we're pretty much there, but we'll see.
What I put in front of you was one that says sample, because I have the clean copy to be signed tonight, instead of using draft.
Okay, and changes that were made since we looked at it the last time?
Well, at the Finance Committee meeting, there was, on Article 5, which has to do with the police cars, the fully equipped, they wanted to add or request that we add the word marked cruiser. So, Article 5, you will notice, has been through, DRA and legal has been through all of our warrant articles. And DRA wanted to reword Article 5. It basically says the same thing, but they like their wording versus ours, so, what you have in front of you is DRA's language.
Why don't I just read it for people here?
Sure.
Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $44,571 for the purchase of one fully equipped marked police cruiser, and to authorize $44,571 to be withdrawn from the unreserved fund balance for this purpose. This will replace an existing cruiser.
And everything else was fine on all of the articles.
Nothing else was changed.
No, just that, and then on Article 21, I capitalized town, shall the town, so there's a capital T now. And I corrected the spelling, there was a couple spelling errors still that nobody caught.
We missed that, Jan.
That's okay, spell check worked. And then the tax impact on Article 25 is just estimated at 0. That's all that has been added since you guys met. I will share, you guys, we talked about changing the default and the proposed for restructuring here in the office, so those numbers reflect the actual numbers now of combining the welfare into my office secretary. So that is reflective on the proposed and the default. But your printout that Beth has also given you matches the warrant. So all three pieces of the puzzle match. So I have the MS 636, 3 copies. I have 3 copies of the default, and I have 3 copies of the warrant. If you're all set.
Article 7, we discussed the previous name of the fund for the, is it replacement vehicle or vehicle
Yep,
replacement?
you have exactly what it said in 1999.
Okay.
And the Weare is in there as well. I don't think we need to call it, we know we're in the town of Weare, so I don't think we need to call it Weare again.
Mhm.
This is the postcard one. The one that says sample. That was a week ago.
Anyone have questions on this? Need more time to read through it?
Isn't 21 and 26 the same?
Yeah, the reason,
But we have to leave it on.
you have to
the
leave them on there.
petition.
Yes.
So what if one says yes, one says no?
Well, 26 doesn't mean, what's written there. That's a hollow victory. Because it still doesn't accomplish what they need to do.
Okay.
Laura was gonna try to maybe make a friendly amendment for us.
At the floor.
Just let one of you
Okay.
make that so that you would direct them back to
21.
21 is the proper way of wording it.
Mm-hmm.
But with the fact that that's a petition and not all the petition people could be reached, it has to go on there as it is.
Okay.
It's how he wrote it.
Okay.
And he's aware of that.
Okay.
So Laura would give us wording that might, in fact, wait it out?
I'm not sure what the thought is, but she would confer with you Saturday morning before deliberative is.
Okay.
She may just leave it alone. I think there needs to be explanation as to the two different, it's gonna be seen twice, but he would have removed his if he had been able to collect all of the signatures.
John, Jan, anything on here? Okay, Rick? So I guess we're ready for signatures.
Well, what we did is there's three, there's two stapled and there's one loose as they come down the table. I'd like all three signed. On the back page for the first batch, the front page on the next ones, and the front page on the next ones. You probably can follow instructions.
So,
Just the back page. Beth, do you need them to print, or they can just sign a line and we'll... Yeah.
Those two. Those are the first.
Third one, yeah. And if you just want to pick all, this just need 5 in there, and then we'll write it in so it's legible. Pick a line. We'll print the name.
Tell me exactly where do you post these?
The school, Maureen gets a copy, and then we scan a copy for, Maureen gets the original, a school gets the original, and then we'll put a copy on the bulletin board here. I have to go let myself in tonight and to post it.
So when you say the school, you put it on the outside of the door? at the
Nope,
meeting?
I have a key.
The reason I ask is silly, but I was thinking today, What if Naomi's sick if she doesn't show tonight? I have no idea where to post these things.
No. No, and I've already spoken with them as well, so they know. There's 3 of each. There's 3 default, 3 proposed, and 3 warrants. I don't know what that is. John, you can keep the pile down there. I'll get them after. Nope. Tom, that's above yet.
These all have to be signed in just one place, correct?
Yeah, we'll fill in the name and we'll print it.
There you go.
That's it. You can move on.
Next on our agenda is the minutes of January 22nd, 2018. We had page 1, I had one correction on mine, and that was under department heads, 3rd line down. She will be traveling with them, and I just crossed out the word on. It says on covering their events. It's just and covering their events rather than on. Anybody else have anything on page 1? Page 2, in the first major paragraph where it says discussion, 4th line down, about halfway over, I added an S to items rather than item. And in the next line, after the word glitches, Chairman Clow stated that this is where he feels is one of the glitches, and I just put wanted to add in the purchasing policy just to clarify that. Then dropping down to where it says Article 3, about a third of the way up, stated that there was, just inserted in the first line, the word there. After that, there was some feedback regarding, and I inserted this article. So it says Chairman Cole stated there was some feedback regarding this article. And then, the very last line on the page, I crossed out the very last word, "to." So he would like something to go, add the word to go, in that version, in there versus nothing. Anything else on page 2? Page 3, third line down, I added a couple of words. The fleet that is left is too unpredictable, therefore he would like to keep both old cars. Just to clarify that. Didn't turn out that way, but that was what was in this. Anything else on page 3? Anything on page 4? Got a couple of things here on under other business. Next to the last line, I just, instead of officials that, I put, crossed out that and put who. Officials who can explain, etc. And then at the end of that same line, he would love to get as many, cross out the H, as he. Okay. Anything else on that page? Everybody else okay?
Mm-hmm.
I move that we accept the January 22nd minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass them down to our scribe. Manifest. Oh my goodness. Move to order the treasurer to sign the payroll and accounts payable checks dated February 1st, 2018, as included in the following manifests. Payroll manifest. $55,767.23. Accounts payable manifest. $108,182.30. John Stark Regional District manifests $500,000. Weare School District manifest $450,000 for a total of $1,113,949.53. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I got a question on the dispatch with Goffstown. I thought that was one contract. Is that two? I said there was two invoices in there. That's all.
Yeah, there's one for police, one for fire.
Okay. I thought that was one. That's all.
There's radio is one.
Okay. That's it.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. You have a copy?
Mhm.
Administrators report?
Yeah, it's, there's really not, other than it's a placeholder for, we've been with the budget, so,
I'm sorry, did you,
there isn't much added other than I did put on the ACO position so we can meet with Chief Kelly in February. So, in February, what I wanna do is, we talked about the hawkers and peddlers. We also talked about, maybe talking about the purchasing policy again, and the ACO again. I'm not sure if you want to do that before deliberative session, or do you want to do that, you have one meeting or two meetings before deliberative session, but the second meeting, typically you guys will decide and you can fill it in, but who's going to talk about what articles for deliberative session? So we can put, if you want, are you around next week? So we could have the ACO discussion if you want next week.
We only got one more meeting before deliberative session, next Monday.
I stretched it out. I'm just kidding. I didn't look at the calendar, so.
Yeah. A week from Saturday, deliberative session.
That's very true.
We only got next Monday.
So I'll be late then if I went 2 Saturdays, right?
Yeah.
All right, then next week we'll just pick out what you're gonna talk about, and then we can still meet with Sean. And then after deliberative session, we can handle the, purchasing policy and hawkers and peddlers.
Now, speaking assignments for the deliberative session, you wanna wait until next week on those? People will look it over and make a decision, or we wanna vote on that tonight?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, like John said, next Monday you could decide that.
Yeah.
We'll just run down and see which ones you want to. Because then typically, just keep in mind, the ones you speak with at deliberative session are the ones you write the blurb for.
A lot of them for the mail
Figured that out the hard way
are
my
gonna
first
be
year.
very, very similar to last year.
Right.
A lot of them are repeats.
So that we could do that, everybody just be, yeah, they are, most of them are the same. That's all that's on here for now.
Okay.
I want to ask you what you want to do the week of the 19th, though. The week of the 19th, the office is closed for President's Day. So do you want to meet another night that week? Or what do you want to do? The 19th, typically, when the office is closed, you've always not met. But we usually pick another week. Another night of the week, sorry.
It seems like we'd be in pretty good shape by now.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the budget and the warrant, and can we afford a night off?
Okay, the only thing I'm going to say is the 12th, and we're going to stay and we're going to finish everything so that we can get everything to the printer that Friday. Okay? Okay. All right, that's fine with me. Mary asked me about the calendar, so. All right, thank you.
Public comment? Yes, I did say. Yeah.
Lost it already.
Good evening, Lynn Kirk, on Dearborn Road. I wasn't able to come to the second public hearing because of the weather. Couldn't make it out of my road. So I'm here in public comment, to make my comments. First, I would just like to reflect on the minutes of 1/15/18. And I felt that they didn't reflect what, Tom, you confirmed that what I brought up in public hearing would have no bearing on the TA contract. And when I asked what the benefit would be for my speaking, you said that it would be in the public record. And I felt that that comment should have been in the public record.
Okay.
So, I know that the minutes have already been approved. I don't know whether you can go back, but if not, then I'd like them to be sure that they were in these minutes today. I wondered why there was no mention of the cost of the Selectmen's agreement with the TA after you agreed on the contract on December, whether it was the 27th or the week before. Normally, when you come out of those non-publics, you make some kind of comment, and I wondered why that wasn't done, because then no one knew this was really coming up as a concrete thing. So I don't know if there's an answer to that or not.
I don't think there is an answer to it. If it wasn't an intentional measure to not inform people, we just didn't mention it.
Because that just sort of compounds it. When I reread the contract, it's a 5-year contract, but really it's a 6-year contract, in the sense that if it, let's see how they put it here. If it's not renegotiated or, let's see, the town and the employee may undertake to negotiate an extension or replacement of this agreement prior to the expiration date of this agreement. Any such extension or replacement shall be valid only if contained in a written agreement signed by the employee and the Board of Selectmen. If an extension has not been negotiated prior to the expiration of this agreement, the agreement will automatically renew for one more year. And it just seems to me that if you don't come to, if the board remembers that they have to renegotiate, and if they're in renegotiations, but they haven't come to a conclusion, a 6th year is automatic. That's how I read it. And I just wanted people, or just wanted to bring up that it's a 5-year contract, but really looks like a 6-year contract. And this has probably been posed to you before, but I wondered how you defend that the TA's contract is in the default budget. Something unusual, I thought, was in the contract in that the last sentence reads that the TA contract, the town agrees to include all such sums necessary to fund the agreement as part of the default budget set forth in RSA 40:13 9B. And I know that over the years, certainly I've had disagreements with what goes in the contract or not, but I'd like to read you something from Stephen Buckley from the Municipal Association in a Q&A, where he talks about the default budget in SB2 towns. And the question is, what are contracts and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law that are included in the default budget? And the answer is, the annual cost of any multi-year contracts that have been approved by a prior town meeting would be included in the default budget, such as a collective bargaining agreement. The same would be true of any other multi-year contract where the full multi-year cost of the agreement was discussed and disclosed at the town meeting where the agreements were approved. So I guess I don't get it. The TA contract wasn't approved at a town meeting. I don't see how that increase can be in the default budget. Certainly, if it had been in the proposed budget and it was passed by the voters, it would be ongoing for however many years. So that that concerns me. The other thing, sort of on a whole town sense, you're giving an 18% increase to the TA, and you're proposing a 2% increase for the rest of the town employees. And then after 2 years, a TA can get that as well. I just think it's just wrong. It's wrong inside of me, and I think other people, as they find out about this, believe it's just wrong also. And with that, I'm wondering if you're confusing the TA salary with the town manager's salary. I've contacted some of the other towns to see if the salary was up way above $100,000. I think that your negotiating might have started with pie in the sky, and I'm wondering whether it really reflects the TA salaries that you were referring to. Now, a lot of these people have a great deal of experience. I still don't think it's there. I mean, if you negotiate it down to $92,000, then the starting point must have been $120,000 or more. And I just found, I didn't find anybody who was making that who was a TA and not a town manager. But in addition to that, we're Weare, and using the concepts or ideas of other towns doesn't necessarily have to fly here. I mean, we don't need to keep up with the Joneses. That's not what our town has ever done. So I'd like to have that out there. And quite frankly, no matter how nice each of you is as individuals, what you've done here with the TA contract, I think is wrong. The public can't have faith in a board that doesn't listen to its constituency and appears to benefit individuals over that of the town. And I request that my remarks be included in tonight's minutes. Thank you.
Should we just hit replay? You know what I'm gonna say.
Oh, about the,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So you're gonna get back to it later, is this later, or?
Yeah, that's fine, and I didn't mean to be rude about it.
That's
but
right.
We were in the middle of the department heads, and this was actually a public comment thing. I'm just trying to stick by our,
Well, it wasn't all the department heads, there was a committee. The cable committee got up to speak.
well, that's what, department heads and committee items was what the agenda said.
Okay, whatever.
So that's, you know, hey, if you had come forward with something from the finance committee at that point.
All right,
then no
let's
issue
move on.
whatsoever. Okay? So, again,
So you're gonna answer it now, or keep me in suspense for
why don't
another
you?
4 weeks?
Why don't you just, so that it fits together, go through what you just said again?
I don't know how long ago it was, but maybe a couple of months ago, I noticed that when I came up to one of the selectmen's meetings on Monday night, the chief was parked beside me, and I happened to see that the plates had been changed. So on a couple of meetings later, on the one on January 2nd, which was on a Tuesday because Monday was a holiday, I asked a question, and both you and Ricky at the same time answered, "We'll get back to you." That was 4 weeks ago, and I haven't heard an answer from anybody yet. So I just thought I'd readdress it, and
Well, while we have the chief right here, why don't I put him on the spot and if you
not
could,
to be rude, have my back to you, sir. You want to take it?
like, why did we change those out? I mean, I don't see.
If you'll recall, Tom and Jan and John, you're not going to be able to recall because this predated both of you, but that discussion was held in non-public session, and if I recall correctly, our attorney was involved. So before I respond fully to that, we're going to consult our attorney.
Okay. Yeah, I had forgotten that, John.
Next
So,
question.
so we'll have to get back to you.
I've heard that before. Next question. Are all department heads required to sign the code of ethics that we had to for the finance committee?
Every employee, I believe, has to sign that.
Just a matter of knowledge.
Every committee person, every,
So that's a requirement of employment or even appointment.
yeah.
Yeah, it's on, when we have an employee package, when they start new, that's
Okay.
one of the items they have to sign.
Okay.
We don't do it every year, it's when you initially start here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did one with Mr. Foss. So, that's leading into the other night when I was speaking about the backhoe and Benji jumped up and started cross-examining me. That was my time at the microphone and he interrupted and I'm very disappointed you didn't stop him. I wasn't gonna confront him, I just tried to answer questions and keep going with what I was trying to say. And he kept trying to jump in and confront me and it's rude. Let's just call it basics, it's rude. Not the way I was brought up, I'm sure that was not the way you were brought up, so.
Well, I'm pretty much the backwoods, but
Well,
no, I didn't see it that way at the time, Craig. I'm not arguing with your interpretation of what happened.
Okay, no, that's
but-
fine.
But I didn't see it that way at the time. Benji's a pretty even-keeled guy. You know, I
he
didn't
seemed
see
to
it that
jump
way.
up and raring to go, but that was my interpretation of it. I mean, I know that he and I don't agree. I mean, I think the maintenance program should be beefed up. 18 years on a backhoe, the life expectancy, that's old hat. That's not true. If they're maintained, they'll last 20 or 30, 40 years, if they're maintained correctly. And he's saying that this one, the old one, the old Firmac, but it's never been maintained. And I hope that they're gonna change their policy now that we have a brand new one that's gonna be in the same condition in 10 or 12 years that the other one is if it's not maintained properly. That's my issue with maintenance, you know, that kind of thing. It needs to be done. I mean, it just needs to be done. You're only protecting our investment. That's the way I look at it. Costing us more down the road or replacing. I mean, this one was 140 something, 150,000, and in 10 years it's gonna be over 200,000. that the taxpayers are gonna have to come up with. Just want it to be more efficient and maintained better. That was what that was about.
Okay.
And I thought it was very rude for him to jump in and start kind of cross-examining me when it was my turn to speak. Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Richard Buck. Certainly willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the Board of Selectmen when it comes to remembering that there are 2 public hearings required for the town administrator's contract. And I thought the most recent one was back in May of 2017.
What do you,
That there was a reminder to the board that there was a need to hold public hearings prior to signing the contract.
or the reminder?
I thought the most recent reminder would have been in May of 2017, which is at the time you approved the second contract for the police chief. But in going through some minutes, I find that a week before you signed the contract, December 18th, in the minutes, it says the board will need to hold 2 public hearings on the town administrator's contract. That was a week before you signed the contract. So I don't know what the public is left to believe when it's 7 days prior to you signing the contract. It was stated that you should have 2 public hearings prior to signing the contract. It's disappointing that I actually came across that.
Well, we have had 2 public hearings.
After
And I
the
know we
contract-
disagree, but
After the
we have
contract
had
was,
2 public hearings.
but that was after the contract was signed.
That's true. But
Okay.
it had not
Minor
gone into
point,
effect.
but yeah.
There had been no raises given at that time, prior to either of those public hearings.
I don't, well, I don't think that's necessarily relevant in terms of raises. They eventually will get cut in, right? Earlier in the meeting, when you were talking about the operating budget, that's the last thing I'm going to say about that
Okay,
subject, really.
thank you.
It's discouraging and disheartening to actually have to even bring it up. But early in the meeting, you had talked about the welfare department. And I didn't quite hear everything that was said, and it maybe wasn't fully explained for people who don't have the budget, but what happened is,
Okay, without getting into great details because we're talking personnel issues, but the welfare piece is going to be handled by the town administrator's secretary henceforth. And so the amount of money that you see in welfare for the welfare person's salary was deducted from the line for town administrator's salary because she will be paid from those 2 sources combined. So if you look at the previous printout from the town administrator's secretary, you'll see a larger amount than in the final one that we agreed upon, because we're shifting those duties there because they've pretty much been handled out of the town administrator's office for some time anyway. So again, I have to walk carefully here because we're talking about a personnel issue, but just the responsibilities are going to be transferred to the town administrator's office, with the secretary handling the ongoing interaction with the public.
and is that going to result in an increase
Pardon?
pay for the town administrators? Not for the town administrator, but the secretary?
No. It ties in with the shift of responsibilities and how it's working with the, she's having she's having her responsibilities related to, according to this budget, if it goes through, the highway responsibilities will no longer be part of her job. There'll be a separate person because that person will be located at the highway garage.
Right.
So to make up some of that, it isn't an even trade, but to make up some of that difference, she will take over the welfare responsibilities.
So the total line in that budget is $26,000. Where would I find that now? Is it portion, is that still under the,
Let me dig out what I'm looking at here. Is that one we got today?
No, this is, yeah, we got it today, but it's dated the 23rd.
do you have a new budget coming? Do we have any more? Oh, were you saving it for Christmas? Oh. There's 3 copies.
What page are you on?
30 of 14, 38 says secretary. Something about this wages department.
That's a good comparison. What did yours say? And what does that mean?
That line is 24,508.
508.
24,508. Got the corner? It's 24.
Okay. On our budget that we reviewed on the 15th, the secretary's salary was listed as $32,677. In the latest, it's listed as $24,508. Now, if you take that $24,508 and you go to the welfare line, the salary, and you add it into that $24,508, it should come back to the original amount because we're combining the duties of the welfare with the duties of the town administrative secretary.
Okay, so without going, I understand what you're saying, but there's a possibility that there'd still be a person in that department, but they would be doing fewer things, or?
In the welfare?
Yeah.
There won't be a person.
So, okay. So if you add both the welfare line and the secretarial line for the town administrator, that you come up with the total,
You come back to that 32
which was the original
secretaries.
secretary. And all the other line items are still under welfare?
Yeah.
I mean, total $26,000, it's not chump change. Those are all still listed under welfare?
Tom, I'm confused when Helene was up here, basically you stated, or maybe it was Dick, I don't know, you stated that there were 2 public hearings for the town administrative contract. But going by the minutes here back on May 11, 2015, and you were the one stating this, it says in 2005 there was a warrant article that passed requiring that the town have 2 public hearings prior to entering into an employment contract. Are you telling us then that the 2 public hearings you had meet the goal of what this article stated, or I'm confused by that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You are.
It's not, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, was it? When you were here, John, and it's not ideal. It would have been better if we'd started the process in October, but we didn't. And so we started the process late. The other contract ran out. We needed to have a new contract, so we went ahead with it. And we held the 2 public hearings, but held off on any raises being given until after the 2 public hearings.
Are you basically stating then that the warrant article in 2005 has no bearing on what you people do, or?
I'm not second guessing anything. I'm just saying this is what happened.
Well, I'm confused. I mean, if a warrant article is presented and passed by the town, does it have any meaning or not?
I'd have to consult our attorney on that, but I believe she told us that it's advisory.
You were pretty definite in this statement. You said passed requiring. I mean, it wasn't questionable as to what you were saying here. It said requiring that we have 2 public hearings prior. I mean, that was the word you used, prior to entering into an employment contract. That seems pretty black and white to me. I don't know. I don't.
Those are my words, or those are the words of the warrant article?
No, this is your words at a public hearing on May 11th, 2015.
Or 2015?
Yes.
No wonder I'm not remembering that.
Oh, you remember. You remember. You got a memory on you. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in what's going on. I do have one other thing, though, I would like to bring up, and this was the last time I was here. I was mentioning that Sean came up and stated something that I wasn't aware of at the time, and I think all the townspeople, I would say a majority of the townspeople were not aware of this either. There was something in the contract, the union contract for the police, that apparently was passed and signed, and in that contract apparently was a clause that basically stated that there would be a minimum of 2 people on per shift. And Sean used that as a reason as to why we need to increase our police force to be able to schedule with 2 people on per shift. Now, I was unaware that clause was in the contract. I think that any time we have any kind of a contract, that contract ought to be made available in hard copy, especially at the deliberative session, or any time prior to the people who are going to have to vote on that contract. And I believe it probably should be made aware to the people through you people that stuff like that, because that's a cost factor. I was not aware of that being in there. And as we can see now, that is one of the reasons we're looking to hire more officers, and that puts a cost factor. So when you come out and say this union contract is going to cost X amount, well, it's kind of deceptive in a way if you don't say that, no, we need to hire more officers to meet the terms of this contract. And I think that's totally deceptive on my part. I mean, I'm not claiming that you were, intentionally deceptive, but I think that kind of information in any contract, union or non-union, it comes out that's going to cause either an increase in employment or whatever. It needs to be known so that when the voters vote on something like that, that they have the full story. And I would like to say, coming up to this deliberative session, I'd like to see a copies of the contract that we are voting on for the town administrator made available, so everybody can at least look and see what it is they're voting. Well, they're not even voting on it, but it would be nice to have people know what it is we've gotten into here. And I think, going forward, any time like that needs to be out there. I don't understand how that happened, but, it's probably my fault too. I should have checked into it, but I don't like that. That's not right.
Thank you, John.
Lori Davis, Buxton School Road. I think going forward, it would be very nice if before we go to deliberative session, that the Board of Selectmen actually put out a statement defining how warrant articles are really done. For instance, there are advisory warrant articles and there are actually money warrant articles. Anything that does not control money does not have to be followed by the Board of Selectmen. You've done it, and your lawyer will tell you it's an advisory. You can or you don't have to. The townspeople are trusting enough to think that when they put forth a warrant article and they vote for it, that word is gospel. What they do not realize is their word stands for absolutely zero, and that you people are going to do whatever you want, however you want, unless it's a money warrant article. And that is very specific. You can't get around anything. You have to handle that money very carefully. But when it comes to 2 hearings before you sign something, or shall, may, must, or the new warrant article that's coming out that you want the Finance Committee on camera, but you're not demanding that the Board of Fire Wards be on camera, makes you wonder what's going on. And the people in town do not know this. The board doesn't know a lot of this. A lot of people on this board are just learning for the first time. But the Board of Selectmen play a game with the residents in their towns. And it's being done here. It's been done for the last set of contracts, not only with the chief and the TA this year. 3 years ago, we went through this before, but the residents do not understand how these warrant articles work. And nobody has ever been, our favorite word, transparent about these warrant articles. That's wrong. And I think it's very important that that be handled, because if it's not handled, I know for a fact it's going to come up at deliberative session. The town residents are going to be educated at how the board moves around things, how they get around doing things. And it's perfectly legal, but the residents need to know that when they pass a warrant article, if it doesn't concern money, you don't have to follow it. And they need to know that the people they're putting into office really are not about the residents at all.
I'd just like some clarification on the article that's adding a police officer, a request for additional police officer. I've heard the upside of what it will accomplish, but, you know, there's a possibility our article will not be approved. So what's the backup plan if that article is not approved? Things I've heard is that, I don't know if there's a difference between jurisdiction by the state police in the town of Weare and differing from an emergency call where the state police will respond. So I really having a problem putting my hand around what happens if we don't hire that additional officer.
My understanding, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in an emergency situation, the state police are not going to turn away. They would respond to the emergency in the town. But if we're looking for somebody to take the place of our police officers and cover that additional 4 hours on a regular basis, then we're going to have to pay for it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong.
I'm wrong, okay. Then please, educate me.
Okay, thanks. So the statute that governs state police jurisdiction is very specific. In communities that there are 3,000 residents or less, the state police has jurisdiction. The threshold of 3,001, which obviously we exceed by many thousands, the jurisdiction or their authority to act under the law goes into place with a request from the community. Okay? So in this instance, what we have done, very frankly, with the graciousness of the current troop commander down in B and his predecessor also in B, they have essentially done a handshake agreement we'll come into town if you need us to come into town. And what happened this past, 2016 and 17, was there was a significant amount of scrutiny that went into state police jurisdiction, enough so that there was some changes to the law. And in bringing that to the attention of our legal counsel, we were instructed that in order for us to meet the statutory obligation for a request in a legal setting, we would have to have a written agreement. So it would be different if using Jack because he used to wear the uniform of the state police. If we were standing at the intersection out here, and I said, Jack, I need your help, and that would be sufficient for the purpose of the statute. In order for him, if he had to act and make an arrest or something like that, that would be sufficient for the purpose of the statute. But in the absence of a Weare police officer, our counsel is telling us that we have to have a written agreement, okay, that spells out precisely what our expectations are with regard to jurisdiction and law enforcement authority. And the state police are willing to enter that agreement. However, because of the fact that now we would be entering into a formal arrangement with them, they have to have a mechanism by which they pay for that service. And they would charge us $109,000 for that to occur.
So I have a question, Chief. I'm just gonna play dumb here because obviously I am. The Everett Turnpike. Does Bedford ask them to cover the Everett Turnpike?
That's what you're hitting exactly what the scrutiny was about last year. What they discovered was, and this was through legal challenges in the various district courts, was exactly what you're asking about. Did the state police in these jurisdictions have the authority to stop? And what the court said was no, they didn't. Because of the fact that the stretch of road that they were passing through was not an interstate. In the case that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, it was Route 101. Because it's not an interstate, the state police didn't have automatic jurisdiction. So when they were passing through communities with less or with greater than 3,000 people, the stops they were making, or rather the arrests they were making, weren't working. So they weren't surviving legal challenges. So they had to change the statute that enabled the state police on certain roads to make those arrests.
So only on certain roads. So 114, where it's a state-funded road, is not.
Now there's let's say a trooper was in a community that had less than 3,000 people, and they were conducting their ordinary business, and they were passing through the town of Weare on their way over to the interstate, okay, 89, let's say. If during the course of that normal and ordinary passage through town, they observed a violation, they could stop. They could make a stop, and in the event that, let's say it was a DWI or something, that they could make an arrest. That is allowable under the statute. However, if the trooper then makes that ordinary stop, and it's a normal stop, they issue a ticket or a warning or whatever, and then they decide, I'm going to go up, take a ride down Rockland Road, and come back down River Road, and now they're going to start to patrol. They've lost jurisdictional authority. Clear as mud?
Don't see much use for the state police now.
I'm going to argue with you. The state police are an invaluable resource to us. We can't,
Well,
frankly, we
not
can't
this
survive
town,
without them.
Not this town, but I'm saying outside, if they can't.
Anything else?
No, makes
Well,
sense.
yeah. in here?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Concerning this,
What's the information that's going on? Is there a statute or something?
I would say 106B50. It's the authority. It says that they can operate on any toll road, interstate, or basically what the chief said, if they're passing through the town of Weare in a crime, no matter what the crime is committed in their presence, they have the authority to act. They cannot actively control, or they have the jurisdiction to enforce the laws of the Director of Motor Vehicles. In other words, speeding tickets and so forth. But they cannot investigate crimes unless if they're in a jurisdiction of it's not a full-time police department or under a population of 3,000.
So if, in essence, what he's saying is, if an ordinary person were to dial 911 and request the police, the state police do not have jurisdiction to act. If the police department makes the request, a very specific request, and that's what that written agreement would have to spell out, is how that request was going to appear in order to meet the legal challenges, then they could act. But absent that, they don't have jurisdiction in town.
I think I'm getting to understand it. I understand the jurisdiction part, and if we need a state police officer here to patrol the town during those hours.
Well, I know I spoke to the colonel about this issue on a couple of occasions, and basically what we'd have to do is sign a memorandum of understanding. In other words, it's like hiring them for a detail like they would be in some other jurisdiction, and they would pay the detail rate for that officer to be here for that 4 hours, and they'd be committed here unless it was a dire emergency, then they would be pulled out to go to the next town to help in real life. But if you were paying them for the 4 hours, they would be here for the 4 hours.
I guess I have to separate the need for service by someone, let's just say, as an example, a domestic dispute, which maybe is more likely to happen during those hours.
And let me say that the colonel also said, there's midnight patrols out here, and the chief knows that if there's an emergency call in this town and there's no officer on, then they'll respond until either an officer comes or they get in contact with somebody and says, well, you can take care of that.
I understand that maybe legally they won't be able to make an arrest.
Well, they could if they get a call and it's an emergency, then there's a separate set, but they'd call somebody, the dispatcher would be calling the chief or some officer in charge and say, yeah, go ahead, make the arrest.
Okay, so we won't be without service if there's an emergency in town at night.
No. And the colonel said they're not gonna cut somebody off. They're not gonna let any citizen, and they'll, and the chief, they've spoken.
So it'd be business as usual, basically.
Somewhat, it's limited, but it'll be, there's certain legal issues, but if there's a real life and death emergency, they'll do what they have to do and sort it out.
Well, the legal issue becomes if they arrest somebody, and that can be maybe challenged because that person didn't have the jurisdiction to make that arrest in town.
Or use of force. Or detain them, or, anything that you're gonna have the potentiality of, Bill of Rights issue over, they have to have the jurisdiction in order to act. Or they're taking on personal liability.
Yeah. Well, if somebody's beating their, spouse up,
well, then it's a crime.
I would suspect
That's precisely why this agreement, in the absence of Weare police, that's why this agreement is so important, is because we're partners with the state police. We can't throw them to the wolves. We have to put the mechanism in place that would enable them to act on our behalf. And when I say our, I mean on the community's behalf, in the event that exactly what you're talking about.
Is that simply a phone call from you?
Not according to our attorney. I would think, yes, but they're saying that we gotta have an agreement.
It'd have to be a case by case if they made a phone call. So in other words, they get a call, there's nobody on, the chief says, yeah, okay, at 2 in the morning, because there's nobody here, at 3 in the morning.
Sorry to belabor this point, but it's been bothering me. Does that agreement that we have, and we're not requiring them to patrol the town, there's no money associated. There's just an agreement that we have with them that if there is a situation in town.
Depends on how you drop the agreement. If you want somebody here all the time, then.
I'm not saying, I don't want anybody here all the time. So if we don't want anybody here all the time and there's an emergency in town, the state police will respond. But do they have jurisdiction to arrest if we're police officers? I know you did mention an example of right out here. If a law enforcement person in the town asked for the police to step in, state police, then that provides them with the authority. In general terms, I know.
It all depends on each situation.
All right, so that it's not that we're not going to, if it gets voted down, it's not, we don't have to worry about emergency services being available during that period of time.
I want to clarify something based on what the chief said. Where is that state police officer going to be in the time of emergency? It could be 30 miles, 40 miles away, 25 miles away. So you've got a situation where they're using domestic abuse as an example because it's maybe more likely than some other things to happen in the wee hours of the morning. And dispatch calls, and according to the way I'm understanding this, dispatch would have to get a Weare officer up and alert at 4 o'clock in the morning to call the state police in order for them to have the authority to respond to that call.
Right.
If that's the case, we're not really protecting people. A lot can happen in the time for that all of those communications to take place, and for that state police officer to come from wherever they may be on their own patrol to, the backwoods of Weare to respond to a case.
What are we willing to pay for that, Mike?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who you are. If you're the victim, and I don't mean that as being sarcastic, but if we're talking about the victim, then I think that probably be willing to pay quite a bit. And as a person who should have some of the responsibilities for that, meaning myself or this board or the police, for that victim, then, there should be a willingness to, as a community, pay for that service. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Lori Davis, I find this a fascinating issue. I finally got the documentation I needed regarding the calls. When I was on the Sound Ordinance Committee 2 years ago, we found out that between the questionable hours, we had 0.05% of 1% calls during that time. Now, having gotten the breakdown and run it through other various agencies to confirm those calls, we have gone to a whopping 0.06% of 1%. We are the second safest town in the state of New Hampshire, and our own police chief, up until this year, has never had a problem with this. Now this year, we're hearing that the way they figure it is wrong. It doesn't make sense. They've been figuring it the same way for years. But the fact of the matter is, we're a very safe town. They will come if there is an emergency. What this is really about is trying to get more people on the police department than we don't have staff for now. We are not up to the 12 we're supposed to have. And we're trying to push staffing. But until we actually get to the 12, there is no reason to be doing this. We do not have a major crime wave coming up in this town. I have the figures to prove that. And I think it's not wise to be putting people in fear of their life when we are not a town that is like that. And they will come. If you're having gunshots at 4 o'clock in the morning, if you call, they will come.
I would just reflect back to what I just said, rather than repeating it. I stand behind the article because, it's not the percentage, it's the severity, in my opinion. Any other public comment? That's where we were at here with this.
This is kind of an answer to, John.
You got the answers tonight?
I guess so, I don't know. I've been sick for a week, so I've had a lot of time to think, I guess. I think basically, John, what that is for officer protection. In other words, if there's 2 guys on a shift.
I'm not questioning that. I was just questioning the fact that that wasn't stated
Oh, okay.
at the deliberative session. I think that would have been a prominent thing.
35 years ago when I was on, I was a one-man army.
Right.
Jack could have been my backup. He could have been in Peterborough or Jaffrey, who knows where at the time.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm not
nice to have.
I'm not questioning where, I'm just saying that it was never stated. And the fact that a certain contract was gonna cost X amount when it really cost Y amount because we had.
But as far as the officer's protection, I'm 100% on board with that because that's their only closest backup that's gonna be effective. And that may not even be effective enough with a town that's as big as we are. To go from one end of town to the other can take a considerable amount of time, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Oh. All right. Any other public comment? If not, we'll move on.
I'd like to make a comment. Well, I realize that the petition warrant Article 54 is an advisory only and does not bind the board to comply. The board in May 2015 and June 2017 did comply. And And the residents had no reason to believe that we weren't going to, or that this board was not going to comply. And I feel as though it questions the integrity and the transparency that this board is representing. So, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, next, correspondence.
I gave you guys an email that I received today as a question. Not sure how much you want to discuss.
This is the one that you heard from
This
Friday
person,
before.
no, this person here, thank you. Evidently, didn't know that he had a tax bill in December. Said that he thoroughly looked through his mail, couldn't find the bill. He works out of his home, checked all his mail, and realized that the bill has never arrived. He's been here 30 years in town, never missed paying a bill, and what happened was Sharon's getting notices out to people because April is impending tax liens. So she sent letters out to everybody, and that's what he realized, that he hadn't paid his bill. So he's asking that the board forgive the penalty and the interest based on that.
And we're talking about just the 2017 taxes?
Yeah, it's about $75.
Yeah, we have had issues in the past with people not getting their bills.
Oh, I
And,
know.
So I think that
And it's my
a
understanding
believable-
that, he's one of the fortunate people that according to the phone call, the mortgage company always paid his bill, and he has no mortgage company anymore. So it was an automatic payment by them, and he just has forgotten it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can answer the other questions, but I could not and do not waive any penalty and interest without asking. The only thing we would do is what we've done in prior years, is if somebody's gonna pay everything in full, the tax is the tax, and you've agreed if it's gonna be paid in full is to waive half the interest. But this is a different situation.
It is a different
He
situation.
explained it.
If the person's never missed a tax payment
Yeah,
before.
and I think it's just a change of, when you have somebody paying your,
And who knows if it didn't get
If
sent
it
to
actually
the
didn't get
mortgage
there,
company,
yeah.
and they said, oh, we don't do this anymore, and
Yeah.
we typically don't send to the, we do have a lot of mortgage companies that will grab the information off the kiosk, but we typically send it to the homeowner, because it's the homeowner's responsibility to pay the bill, not the mortgage company.
Okay.
Because a lot of people don't escrow their taxes. So as the homeowner, we send it to the homeowner, because God only knows how many times banks can get bought.
I would have no problem with
it's your money, I mean, yeah.
It's about $75 as of today,
If he doesn't have anything else pending, he's paid in full up to that point.
just this half.
Yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
think, for $75, it's
No.
sign a good.
You want a motion, or?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that, for the party stated in the letter, that, we waive the tax, the interest and penalty on his tax bill in the amount of approximately $75 for the year of
It would have been the second half of 2017.
second half of 2017.
Seconded. Somebody seconded?
Nope,
No.
you
just
did.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5?
Mhm.
That's the only thing I had under correspondence.
Anybody else in the correspondence?
Yeah, I got a couple emails today from a resident. A little bit of correspondence back and forth, but asking basically to review our the road reconstruction and how it's performed. That's all. As far as how it's executed using and town equipment, et cetera. Maybe.
Probably we should have Benji come in and.
Yeah, no, exactly, it's correspondence,
I'm
that's
not
why
sure.
I'm.
Because he even said himself that he didn't know if this year he was gonna do it the same
Right,
process.
yes,
so-
Benji had said that, then we
So,
got
yeah.
wrapped up in the budget
Yep.
season, I let that resident know, that's
Yep.
what happened, that there was
Yep.
very, very short conversation about changing that, maybe subcontracting more of the work out, maybe
Right.
subcontracting the overseeing out. Like I said, that we would, visit that when the time came.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
The only thing I have is I sent people a copy of a draft of my proposed selectmen's report for the town report. And in reading it through for the umpteenth time, I found a couple of corrections that I should have had, but it's just crossing out the word "the" in one place and moving it to another, and just putting an "an" before "an estimate. And then I found another one that was the same type of correction before, after I sent it out, but I didn't note it because I'd already sent it out. Is this okay with people, or do you have other suggestions to include?
I was just
in it?
thinking maybe we have a little bit more of an introduction, other than just slamming the tax rate out there right away.
Yeah.
More like a, 2017 has been, here we are at the close of another year, and, some kind of an intro like that.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm just,
What are other people's thoughts on that?
When does this have to be ready?
When we put the town report together, pretty soon.
Yeah,
We
well,
can
I had
try.
asked for the second to get everything together, but there's always some stragglers.
Can we work on it till next week? I mean, is that,
Yeah, I mean, I could take it next week as well.
I mean, the
Okay,
rest
'cause
the rest of
I
it to
mean-
me is fine, it's just maybe a little bit of a
Instead of
brief,
getting right up.
how do you do,
Instead of
and
getting
then right in the
Kinda
technicalities.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the reason I started with that is because it's pretty significant.
No, you're right.
especially when
well,
you-
I mean, I'm not saying.
I'm not saying it's not valid, and there's no worth to it.
Be a little more genteel at the beginning and then put that in there, just to get a little further in there.
Yeah, I didn't see it as ungenteel, but
Well,
it's okay.
I mean, I see what, it could go either way, but seeing that, you kind of jump right up and say, oh, this is the tax rate, okay, well, we've had this year, that year, we've had this, our taxes are this.
Yeah, as the calendar 2017 closed, we had a recap. We as the board like to recap what happened, or
My journalistic instinct took over.
short, concise, and the facts, ma'am.
Okay, I could do a different introduction, just,
yeah.
Okay, put it in there,
Yeah.
just an-
instead of the
Would you mind
opening.
running that off? I mean, because it was so hard to just try and do it on here.
I
Okay.
mailed it to you, emailed it to you at home.
Yeah, I got it on here, though. I couldn't get it on my computer.
You can have this,
Oh, okay.
because,
Alright.
we just,
I did catch some of those when I was going through them.
just selfishly, I don't wanna rewrite the whole thing. I mean,
No.
No,
worked
I
on
don't
that
think that's
forever
what they suggested.
to get
No. I think the content and everything you express is what we need to broadcast. Absolutely. And I had absolutely zero problem with the rest of it.
You just want a more gentle introduction.
Right. That's all. Just a hey, how do you do handshake.
Once a date before he gets married.
Okay. That's all I had. Anybody else for other business?
No.
I got one thing. Back the first part of December, Benji was in here and requested to put the wood that's down in the transfer station out for bids.
I've been after him to tell me how much is
Going out
there.
yet?
No, because I said to him I need to have an approximate of how many cords is there, and he said he would get it to me, but with
There's three pickle.
3 what?
believe it's three pickle.
Do you know how much we're talking though?
Supposedly, if I remember right, I heard that it was supposed to be 50 cord delivered to town, which there's not 50 cord down.
3 piccolos, you get the average of what, 7 to 8 quarter piccolo?
No, it's good, it's nice, you could probably get 10.
Well, if somebody can tell me
okay.
how much is in there, that's all I'm waiting for, as to how much, approximately how much wood is there. Because it's my understanding, and you can tell me, I mean, it's not going to be processed on our piece, it's gonna have to be removed from there, so that's all the owner, that's all the bid has to, you know, I'm not gonna tell anybody how to bid, but
I mean, there might be
nothing is
4,
going to be done.
Not over 4 piccolos there.
It's somewhere between 30 and 40 cord.
Yeah, if there's 40, it would be,
A stretch.
oh, yeah. I think
Is
it's a stretch.
approximately
I'd
thir-
say approximately 30.
plus? I don't know.
Plus minus.
Okay.
Plus or minus.
Well, that's all I was waiting for, was how much.
Because it was brought in when I was down there. I know I saw 3 trucks come in, I might have missed one.
And it'll be a sealed bid, you guys will open them that night. But it's also, you know, when, I can have somebody look at them, but, nothing's being done there, other than they'll have to hire somebody to remove it. You know, it's gonna have to go off-site to do whatever it's gonna go with.
Anything else, John?
That was all I had.
Jan?
Yep.
I think we're good to go.
You all set, chief?
She's sitting there just,
The gavel to fall before I sneak out the door tonight.
you didn't wear your flak jacket tonight?
Adjourned.
Aye.
Give it-
Aye.
motion.